Resume the public council session here, and we will get to the Dalton Street building update after the monthly work plan looking forward, on page 87.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, as usual, everyone seems to have left, Helen and Mike, but I'm sure that they'll be back shortly. We really take this mainly on the basis of questions. Just one point from me, the Council Committee structure report in February is principally around the establishment of the Audit and Risk Committee. So I'll be bringing a paper to you to the Corporate and Strategic Committee on that, just to give you a heads up on that. Big Six follow-up afternoon tea is tonight, or later on this afternoon. As Menton has already alluded to, a lot of focus from a number of staff around the continued development of the long-term plan and associated documents, including the consultation document. So, yeah, happy to take questions on specific entries in there.
So, questions, Councillor Gray.
Just one question to kick off. It's not specific, it's a resource management one. I'd just like Mr. Maxwell to give us an update on the Raupury drain. Are the boys playing ball there? Is it
in terms of flows?
Flow rate?
Yes, it was a little bit touch and go immediately post-Christmas. Some of the bigger surface water takes had kicked in. I understand that onion flagging was approaching and they're wanting to get water on onions before they started to flag all at once. So there was some frantic phone calls and emails and texts just to remind them of what happened last time they did that. They changed that, and it's bobbled around the sort of, I think the last it's got is about 312 litres a second, and as of this morning it was up over 400. So it's been a positive outcome with us keeping them informed of the situation and then working collaboratively to avoid it. Yep.
Just, I had a question further down that page, order 89, in regard to Central Hawke's Bay, actually. So they're expected to become non-compliant. Is it a fact now that they are non-compliant?
Yes, so they are non-compliant, and yesterday we issued 2 abatement notices to the council requiring that they undertake a series of actions that we had discussed with them in advance, which was basically technical fixes involving the installation of further filtration devices into the wastewater process to deal with the flocculating organics they're getting in the pond, which is impacting their ability to chemically treat phosphorus and UV treat pathogens. So the 2 abatement notices are slightly staggered in terms of times. So Waipawa is the first one off the list, because as of the end of late last year, they actually purchased a second-hand, they're called plate lamellar filters, which basically help filter out these solids. It will take some time for them to, or relatively short time, but nonetheless time to prepare a foundation for them, because they're quite big, and install them and plumb them up. They're anticipating that will be completed next month, and then there'll be a series of sort of bedding in of those plates, the plate lamellar treatment systems. While they're doing that, and as they're running that up, they're using that as the test to say, do they need to make any further tweaks to it, and then they'll start the installation of an identical system in Waipukurau. So we've said that by July this year, Waipawa must be achieving the required standards, in August for Waipukurau. Allows time for the systems to be installed and settled in place and made operational.
So a question around timing. Were you, I can't recall, were you the resource manager when we had the, basically 12 months discussion with Hastings District Council about non-compliance with its wastewater?
It preceded me. That was just before I arrived.
Did you?
The
was
BTF.
That Daryl?
Yeah,
the BTF. Because that took close to a year to sort out, didn't
Certainly some time. As I recall, their major issue was odour, so major odour complaints and issues, which finally resulted in the installation of the large sort of domes covering them. They breached their odour conditions on multiple occasions. And there was quite a bit of discussion, negotiation, figuring out what was the best technical fix, and then agreement on both parties, a course of action to see the domes installed or the lids put on effectively to manage odour. And since that point, they're fully compliant.
So since, they were non-compliant for a while, my question quite basically is, are you expecting to see a positive outcome in this in the next 3 months? So?
That's the intention. That's the outcome we're looking for. The good thing, I guess, about the process is that it's brought in, Central Hawke's Bay have brought in some independent wastewater engineering expertise to review the plant, and they've looked at these issues, and their recommendation is the installation of these filtration systems. So they're getting further advice. Evidently, this is an issue that's cropping up in other treatment systems of its kind around the world and the country now. So it's that's where those things are going, and people have got the fixes for them. So there's a degree of confidence that solution will resolve the issue. Because, the basic problem is that there's this, they call them organics, I don't know exactly what's in there, but it'll be things like potentially hair and fur and solid organic material in the waste stream that the flocculating agents preferentially bind to. It ends up in this great gooey mess, which then blocks up their sand filters and either trips them out and stops them working properly, and or leaves a large amount of suspended material in the water, which prevents the UV treatment working properly because it's cloudy. It can't get in to treat the pathogens properly. So they're not getting the clarity of water they need to treat through the sand filters and in the UV system. They need to filter that out first before it goes through that system. That's what these separators are designed to do. And there'll be some tweaking, no doubt, and fine-tuning of those, bedding them in, I guess, to get them working. In discussion with the council and their experts, we've worked on these timeframes which they're saying are demanding, and we'll have them working solidly to achieve them, but realistic in terms of being able to deliver the outcome that we both want.
If I could just ask a follow-up question, and please excuse my ignorance, Ian. What's the difference between us sending them a letter saying, hey, we're really unhappy about the fact that you're in breach and we really want you to do something about it, and sending an abatement notice? What's the difference? Is there a legal difference?
Yes, very much
Which
so.
is what?
Well, abatement notice is a formal notice requiring them to take action and cease doing things. Effectively we're saying you must take action to achieve these things by this date.
Is it a condition precedent to us prosecuting, for instance?
Potentially, yes. It certainly opens the door up to say, well, you've now breached an abatement notice, and it's into a court-based prosecution. Invariably, look, we're in daily contact with these guys now around this. So we've got a
So we're giving
live
ourselves
feed.
further options to pursue
Absolutely.
this should they remain in.
So we've been very careful through this whole process to ensure that the way we have structured our communication and the way we've run the whole case management to say that we have any option available to us in the future. So if we get to a point where the decision is that prosecution formally through the Environment Court is the best option, that is available to us. We haven't shut the door on any of those.
That's, from a public perspective, a lot of people are really concerned about this. So in the press release that we issued yesterday, there wasn't, in my view anyway, sufficient clarity around the legal implication of what an abatement notice means, and I think it might have been helpful if we'd anyway.
Councillor Balfour.
Just I assume though that the abatement notice still can't go as far as stipulating any kind of methodology or whatever. You've been discussing that with them. They I gather have reassured you that they have a plan of action that we think will meet the standards, and that's putting a time limit on that process is about all this notice can do.
It's a little bit of a grey area. We have taken the step of including in there the requirement for the filtration to be installed and the dates by which that's to occur, as well as meeting the discharge standards. So I guess if we were in the position of having a council who, or a consent holder who we were thinking was uncooperative and difficult, we would probably just be fairly vanilla about it in terms of saying do this by this date, but in this instance we've included in that some further direction around what we have agreed they need to do to achieve the outcome.
Councillor Barker.
I remake the point again that the decision about whether to prosecute or not is entirely a staff matter. It has to be separated from political processes. I want to be very clear on that. I'm not going to ever get in a position of saying I think he should not. But I do have a role here in asking questions, which is comparability. So I want to be assured by you that the processes we've entered into with Central Hawke's Bay District Council are consistent with other actions the council has taken in like cases. I'm aware that the Regional Council did prosecute and fine Central Hawke's Bay District Council some time ago on sewage. I'm aware that we have fined the Hastings District Council. I'm aware that we do issue, threaten or so on to prosecute other people for other things, and people will be looking at this. So I just want to be assured by you that the processes we've entered into with this are absolutely consistent with everything else, so that no one can say, well, you treated Central Hawke's Bay District Council in a favourable way where you didn't treat us. I know there's a little bit of subjectiveness about those things, but that's my concern. I want to be assured that we're absolutely consistent in the way we deal with all of these things.
Thank you, Councillor. And I think, if anything, we're even more aware of the perception of how we deal with another council.
Sure.
As opposed to, perhaps an individual consent holder or a private business. So we're very conscious of being seen to be consistent and fair and everything else. In terms of a prosecution or a potential prosecution, really, that's only if you like, a first step or our first response. If the consent holder shows absolutely no willingness at all to try and work towards achieving compliance, and is not interested in engaging with the council, and is just not going to change their action or behaviour, or or just has inaction. So that's that's one approach. But in other circumstances, where such as in this case, where any consent holder still is genuinely trying to comply with their consent conditions, we prefer to work with them. And while the abatement notice is actually a legal tool that gives everyone a level of certainty and comfort,
Yep.
The only time then that we would probably look at prosecution is if, if eventually we ran the whole course and nothing was working, for example, and may have to stop them from doing whatever they're doing. But we do try and have that kind of consistent approach based on the willingness of the consent holder to achieve the outcomes that the consent originally sought, or the conditions did anyway, irrespective of who they are.
And just for clarity too, just in terms of costs, it costs money to run these processes and to ensure compliance with consents. That's fully recoverable from the consent holder. So the action we're taking here in terms of managing their compliance with the consents is something they'll be paying for through their compliance charges against their consents.
Okay. There is some other opportunities to discuss other things, but we'll get to that. Councillor Hewitt.
Tell me, is there any potential way that the drought and the low flows could have exacerbated this situation in the community? And my follow-up to that is, will the flushing flows that are likely to come through the Ruataniwha water storage system help?
The climate conditions haven't sort of exacerbated the problem in terms of the technical issues they've had in the pond, no. So that's purely a result of just the way the ponds operate.
I've got another question here, and totally different, which is the bottom of that page, 89. series of zone-based public meetings will be held. When will they be held?
I'm not
On the Section 36 charges, because I think that's quite a contentious issue that surfaced again around the traps.
sure. I'm not.
Certainly in Waddle, where they've all got to build this here, and they're prone to calling me about it.
I'm not sure exactly of the dates. I'll find out and let you know, and where they are. These
And
are
our council is encouraged to attend, I suppose. isn't it?
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. These are in response to communication we had with a range of consent holders, and the Hawke's Bay Fruit Growers Association in particular were really keen that we got out amongst the community and talked about what the charges are, because some people still don't understand, and we've just recently developed a tool that allows us to go out there and advise people, we think your charge is going to be in this range. One of the biggest criticisms people are giving of the system is that they run businesses and they need to forecast and budget for charges, and they need to know in advance what they're likely to be so that they can plan for that. So we're trying to deliver them those tools.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Pipe. then
Yeah, just
Councillor
one
Belford.
question on the bottom of page 88. Satellite mapping of Hiratonga Plains continues. Can you just elaborate on that? Is that soil mapping, or and how much does that cost? And just a little bit of detail about it.
I'm not sure about the cost. It's basically land use. We use the satellite imagery to determine land use change. So I'm not sure. I think Dr. Lynch may have presented some of those images to council through the Environment Services Committee at one stage, showing some early imagery that he'd taken across the plains, showing the change in land use across seasons. So how land use is changing. We're using this information then to inform land use scenarios to model, to determine what's likely to happen in terms of water quality outcomes using our contaminant fate and transport models. So I don't know the costs off the top of my head. I'll find out and let you know. And it provides, I guess, a comprehensive sort of library of land use that we're able to then run various land use scenarios and models around.
Thank you. Councillor Belford.
I had a different question, but just as a follow-up to that, are we planning to do that with respect to the Ruatanifa Plains?
Not immediately.
Why wouldn't we?
We do have satellite imagery for Ruatanifa, but this is a new tasking.
More granular.
Yeah, this is a new tasking of the satellite. It's relatively expensive to do, so we're sort of moving into the areas we know we've got policy development, plan development work ahead of us on. We do have some Landsat 8 imagery that Stephen Swaby, our new science manager, has been working up, which doesn't give us the same resolution but gives a degree of information that we haven't had in the past.
Okay.
But nothing scheduled for Ruatanifa immediately.
Right, well, my question is also on page 88, the State of the Environment Report. We're almost out of January now.
We are indeed, councillor.
Is there any more precision as to when that might
Yes.
actually be
Yep.
done?
So we have a hard date now of having that to the Environment Services Committee meeting for adoption on the 11th of March. Yep. We had hoped to have had it to the council meeting at the end of February. The issue that we've had is that we're working through a company called GASP, who are a design company. They've gone into recess over the summer break. They've only, I think it was just last week, they came back into work. So we've had a bit of a hiatus of having them available. We're flat out working with them on the final design and the layup, which, as you might appreciate, takes a bit of a go around, a few iterations to get it right and proofread and laid up properly. We just don't think we're going to have it to you in February like we had sort of hoped for. Not to the last gasp, but that's the 11th of March.
Okay, any other questions? That was a good discussion, actually. You happy to move, Councillor Graham? Thank you. We have a seconder in Councillor Bevan. Thank you. Wish to discuss? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried.